I am convinced that no person is free unless all people are free, because of the obligation we have to expose the plights of those living in tyranny. And oftentimes we're too complacent to talk about what is happening in the world. The day I was sworn in Congress in January of 1993, I took my family to the Department of Archives and looked at the Emancipation Proclamation from my home state of Illinois. And a few months later, I went back to the Library of Congress with Loretta Carter Haynes, who was a descendant of George Washington's slaves. The curator was there, along with Loretta and my wife and our 3 small children, and he handed me the original draft of the Emancipation Proclamation. It was encased in plastic, and as he handed it to me, Loretta's knees buckled and she collapsed in the chair that was just beneath her. And my hands shook, probably with the same trembling that Abraham Lincoln had when he signed that Emancipation Proclamation. And my wife turned to me and she said, "Read it to the children." That on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall then be and are forever free. Human rights is an issue that we need to talk more and more about, not only in this country, but around the world. I was in Brussels in 1995 with Tom Lantos and a group of people from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And some European parliamentarian stood up and pointed his finger at Mr. Lantos, who had lived both under Hitler and Stalin. And he said, "Where were the Americans when the Nazis were invading and conquering Europe?" And Mr. Lantos stood up very tall, and in his very clear voice, he went through battle by battle, graveyard by graveyard. And he said, "Were it not for the Americans, you, sir, would be living under the flag of the Nazis." And Tom Lantos understood human rights, as very few people do, and he continued to talk about it. In 1997, the Speaker appointed 2 other members of Congress and myself to oversee the transition of Hong Kong to China. And there we met with Martin Lee, who was the George Washington of freedom in Hong Kong. And he said, Deng Xiaoping's promises to us that we would still have a democracy after Hong Kong's lease runs out are simply not true. And yet when the students were marching in the streets a year ago in Hong Kong, because the Chinese had changed the contract and started taking away the freedoms that they had, how many countries spoke out on behalf of those students? There was worldwide silence taking place. And I had the opportunity to serve as a commissioner on the Congressional Executive Commission on Human Rights that was established when China went into the WTO. And today, the Chinese are methodically removing, in certain provinces, any cross and leveling churches, and no one talks about it. And an article broke out, or an article that appeared in the Washington Post this past Friday, a report published by the Simon Shojit Center for the Prevention of Genocide, which is part of the U.S. Holocaust Museum, talked about the Rohingyas in Burma, 1.3 million, as a population at grave risk for additional mass atrocities and even genocide. And the article appeared on the inside of the newspaper, and nothing was in the national news about this tremendous warning coming out from a group that knows quite a bit about genocide and the elimination of people around the world. And so we believe, if we believe in the dignity of a human being, then we cannot rest until we're all free. There's no true freedom in the world unless everybody is free. And that's the obligation that we have as Americans and as citizens of other countries, that tyranny continues to run amok in this world with very few people speaking out against it. And that's the reason we're having the forum this afternoon. Regardless of where one is in the world, there are basic human rights that should be respected. And this is not less any true for North Koreans than it is for any of us in this room today. Over the last year, the work of the UN Commission of Inquiry, along with the long-time work of organizations such as the NKDB and the U.S. Committee for Human Rights in North Korea, have helped to shed further light on this important issue. However, one important area that at times receives less attention is the treatment of those that North Korea sends abroad to earn hard currency for its regime. As we will learn further today, these North Koreans often face exploitation from both their North Korean minders and locals. I look forward to learning more about the challenges these individuals face, both from the research that NKDB will present and the testimony that we will hear later today from a North Korean defector who was sent to work abroad. With that, it's my privilege to introduce Dr. Yoon Yeo-sang. Dr. Yoon is well known for his dedication to North Korean human rights and was a founding co-chair of the Database Center for North Korean Human Rights, as well as a founding member of the Executive Committee of the Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights. He currently serves as the Chief Director of NKDB's North Korean Human Rights Archives and as an assistant professor at the University of North Korean Studies. Dr. Yoon is also a teaching professor at the Settlement Support Center for North Korean Refugees, and he helps North Korean refugees adjust to their new lives in South Korea. Dr. Yoon, the floor is yours.
네, 반갑습니다. 영어로 듣다가 이제 한국말을 들으셔야 할 시간입니다. 저희 NKDB와 저에 대한 소개는 우리 만줄로 소장님께서 자세하게 말씀을 해주셨기 때문에 저는 감사 인사만 몇 마디 덧붙이도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 이제 저희들이 북한에서 생활하시다가 지금 해외에 나가 있는 많은 분들에 대한 인권 문제를 이야기하려고 하는데요. 이런 자리가 만들어지게 많은 도움을 주신 우리 KEI의 많은 분들에게 일단 감사를 드립니다. 아마도 지금 이 자리에 와 계시는 분들은 적어도 북한 사회에 대한 관심을 갖고 이 자리에 왔을 것입니다. 그런데 우리 모두가 알고 있듯이 북한은 동북아시아의 아주 작은 나라입니다. 그리고 가장 폐쇄되고 통제된 사회이기 때문에 이곳에 대한 접근은 대단히 어렵습니다. 또 지금 많은 사람들이 그리고 많은 나라에서 이곳에 대해서 많은 영향을 미치고 싶어 하지만 어려움을 겪고 있습니다. 그런데 저희들은 이번에 북한 사회가 단 하나밖에 없지만 실제로는 세계 여러 곳에 있다고 하는 것을 발견하게 됐습니다. 적어도 북한 사회는 하나밖에 없지만 북한 사람들이 북한 사회에서와 똑같은 방식으로 똑같은 방식의 일을 하고 똑같은 통제를 받고 똑같은 인권 침해를 받고 어쩌면 더 많은 어려움을 겪고 있는 북한에서보다 좀 사이즈는 작지만 작은 사회가, 작은 북한 사회가 전 세계에 적어도 20곳 넘게 존재하고 있다는 사실을 알게 되었습니다. 그래서 북한 사회 전체에 대한 접근은 어렵지만 또 이 사회에 대해서 많은 것을 우리가 만들어주긴 어렵지만 적어도 북한 노동자들이 전 세계에 나와 있는 이런 작은 북한 사회에 대해서는 우리가 좀 더 많은 영향을 미칠 수 있고 좀 더 많은 도움을 우리가 줄 수 있다고 하는 사실을 이제 알게 되었습니다. 하지만 이것도 간단하지도 않고 쉬운 일도 아닙니다. 왜냐하면 이것도 규모는 작지만 북한 사회이기 때문입니다. 그래서 저희들이 지금 전 세계의 작은 북한 사회가 어느 곳에 얼마만큼 존재하고 있는지, 또 이것이 북한 사회와 얼마만큼 비슷하고 또 어느 정도의 차이가 있는지, 또한 이곳에 대해서 변화를 주기 위해서는 북한 사회와는 어떻게 다른 방법으로 접근해야 하는지, 이런 부분들을 저희들이 이 책에 정리를 해 놓았고요. 여기에 대해서 자세한 방법론에 대해서 오늘 이 자리에서 많은 분들과 함께 찾고 다 함께 개선하는 방법을 같이 탐구하고자 해서 이 자리를 마련했습니다. 아무쪼록 이 자리에 계시는 우리 많은 정부에서 오신 분들, 또 언론에서 오신 분들, 연구자들, 또 학자들, 많은 학생들이 앞으로 북한 사회의 전체를 바꾸기는 당장 어렵겠지만 북한 사람들이 해외에 나와서 활동하고 있는 이 사람들을 통해서 북한 사회에 더 많은 변화가 있기를, 다 같이 이런 방법을 찾아주기를 저희 희망하고 있고요. 또 단지 이분들이 인권 상황이 더 개선이 되어져서 이분들이 해외에서 체험하고 경험한 것들이 북한 사회에 전달이 되어져서 이것이 북한 사회에 큰 변화가 만들어지기를 저희들이 다 같이 희망하도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 이제부터 저희들이 행사를 시작할 텐데요. 이 모든 것들이 마치는 시간까지 다 함께 좋은 희망을 갖고 참여해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 여기까지는 제가 NKDB의 책임자로서 하는 인사 말씀이었고요. 그 다음 차례 제가 해야 할 역할이 하나 더 있습니다. 뭐냐면 여러분들 갖고 있는 자료 나와 있습니다만은 제가 이 자리에서 물러나면 첫 우리 연설을 해주실 분이 지금 이 자리에 와 계십니다. 이분에 대한 제가 이 간단한 양력에 대한 것을 설명을 드리겠습니다. 우리 쿠마르 선생님 이 자리 지금 와 계시는데요. 어디 계시죠? 우리 손 앞에 지금 와 계십니다. 이분 선생님 우리 엠네스티에서 지금 현재까지 활동을 하고 계시고요. 스리랑카에서 타밀 민족으로 태어나셔서 여러 가지 인권에 대한 어려움을 경험하시고 특히 인권 개선을 위해서 활동하시다가 감옥에서 상당 기간 직접적인 감옥에 대한 그러한 체험을 갖고 계십니다. 그리고 이곳에 와서 국제적으로 인권 개선을 어떻게 우리가 참여할 수 있는지, 어떤 많은 단체들이 함께 할 수 있는지, 이런 부분들에 대한 것들을 체험을 갖고 계시기 때문에 오늘 이 자리에서 좋은 말씀을 우리 모두에게 전달해 주실 것으로 그렇게 저희들이 알고 있습니다. 우리 모두 박수로 저희들이 환영하도록 하겠습니다. 앞에 나와 주시죠.
Thank you very much. Amnesty International is pleased to be part of this initiative today, the initiative of plight of North Korean workers around the world. Why we are pleased? The reason why we are pleased is this particular issue was not touched upon by anyone. So we have heard, we have seen some reports, but this is the comprehensive report that have come out. Amnesty International is also want to thank Korean Economic Institute as well as North Korean Documentation Center for inviting us to be part of this. When you think of North Korea, you think of a couple of issues. Latest was Commission of Inquiry. From the human rights point of view, we have serious concerns. Some concerns are that of other countries as well. For example, freedom of expression is completely denied there. But North Korea is not alone on that accord. Even the neighboring China is pretty much on the same boat. Freedom of media, freedom of religion, list goes on and on. Where few countries join North Korea in abusing that particular right. But North Korea stands out on a couple of reasons and issues. It stands out as one of the closest countries in the world today. There are countries that are so-called closed, but we can safely say North Korea is the closest country, completely denied access to anyone. Human rights organizations have, I think we were invited 1975 or 80 years ago. They tried that experiment, it did not work, so they completely closed us down. The other one is, it holds over 100,000, some political, some others, in their labor camps, in a closed environment. And these people face numerous abuses, including execution, torture, and rape. North Korea also stands out as a country in the world where food is being used as a tool to hold on to power or to punish the opponents. So North Korea stands out like the only country in the world where certain gross human rights abuses are being committed. World took note of this. As a result, UN Human Rights Council appointed a special rapporteur. He was denied access. So it was from outside that people were monitoring, from the people who leave, flee, and those people interviewed, and also through satellite, which Amnesty have the satellite photographs, and we analyzed about the prison camps. When some people flee to China, that's where China come into play. Some of these people, or most of them, have been pulled back, and they face numerous abuses because they left without any permission. Women, North Korean women, get trafficked when they run across because of political and economic reasons. So the community at large in North Korea is undergoing enormous pain and suffering, not only political freedom, but also other human rights abuses. Finally, world woke up and initiated a commission of inquiry about a year ago for committing crimes against humanity. Roberta Cohen is here. She took one of the leadership position in that. So the Commission of Inquiry was established. To my knowledge, UN establishes Commission of Inquiries when there are massive human rights abuses committed until when there is a civil conflict, armed conflict. Thousands got killed. But this stands out as a country where there is no armed conflict, no civil unrest, but the UN felt it's important that a commission of inquiry has to be established. The Commission of Inquiry under Judge Kirby published the report, and now in the UN Security Council. That, as I mentioned, Commission of Inquiry also stands out as the only country where, for non-conflict countries, that was appointed a Commission of Inquiry. North Korea is also standing out. That's what the topic today, for exporting workers or laborers around the world. Other countries send. But the difference that's here is it's being controlled, monitored, abused of these people who have been sent out. In a nutshell, North Korea is not only exporting laborers, they're exporting their their oppression as well of their own citizens. So there are pockets of North Korean abuses taking place wherever the North Korean laborers have been transferred. Just to compare the responsibility of a country when laborers have been transferred. Other countries send thousands, if not tens of thousands across the world. They monitor, protect, and raise concerns about any abuses these workers face. In certain countries, these workers have been trained and given specific recommendations how to behave for cultural and other abuses. There are countries where when their workers have been abused, they have spent tens of thousands of dollars worth of money to protect them. One example was one of the Middle Eastern countries where a woman was tried to be raped, and she, in her self-defense, killed the master or the employer. And the host government got involved, and they paid tens of thousands of dollars as a blood money. In that culture, it's possible to pay blood money to rescue that one poor woman. So the standards that we are seeing from other countries is that they may be poor, they may be weak, but they take the responsibility of protecting their citizens when they are working overseas. But North Korea stands out as the country that not only protect their citizens, they themselves are abusing their laborers who are going overseas. That's what the topic today is going to be. The challenges today we see is, number one, bring this issue to the forefront, to the world at large. That's what this event is important. To highlight the importance of what's happening to these laborers who have been exported, how they have been monitored, where does their money goes, how the government takes it as a foreign currency issue. So it's going to be analyzed today, and what can be done in future to address this. So one issue that missed in the Commission of Inquiry was the plight of workers, North Korean workers around the world. So that's a gap that's there. So the recommendations have to be, which the experts are going to discuss today, is to see how to prevent this from happening. The abuses, not the workers going. Let the workers go, but let the North Korean government take responsibility for their welfare rather than becoming an abuser. So we can be confident that after this discussion, lobbying activities will start, and we can be confident, like the world reacted to abuses happening in North Korea and created a commission of inquiry. Some meaningful action can take place to address the plight of North Korean laborers who have been held hostage and abused by their own government. Thanks again for inviting me.